A lot of people think you don't need to train for hiking, but that just is not true. Hiking, backpacking, and trekking are full body, dynamic sports that demand balance, proprioception, muscular endurance, and mobility. Sure, you could probably go for a mellow day hike without any training. You might even be able to get away with years of hiking before it catches up to you. But when it comes to longevity, going further, recovering faster, and getting the most out of every mile, a smart, focused approach to training can make a huge difference. My name is Mikey Bell with Outdoor Adventure Training, and today I'll be walking you through 5 key principles that will help you move better, feel stronger, and stay out on the trail longer. Of course, nothing could ever supplement the sport-specific training of getting out and hiking on the trail. But that said, very few people actually have access to hills and mountains and trails in close proximity. And that's where we can implement these 5 principles training at home or in a gym so you can show up to the trailhead prepared. I personally am lucky enough to live in a place where I have access to trails and mountains right out of my back door, but I still implement these tools for myself so I can optimize my time on the trail and perform at my highest level. And hopefully this video inspires you to do the same. The first and arguably most important principle that we'll discuss is periodization. This is a very nuanced topic, and I plan to make a whole video on periodization alone, and I'll do my best not to go too far into the weeds. Periodization is all about adaptation, following the principle of specificity, also known as the SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demand. Basically, if you're training for everything, you're training for nothing. It's all about getting focused with your training for a block of time, whether that's 2, 4, 6, or even 8 weeks, to focus on one particular adaptation. And all of our training programs are modeled off of this periodized approach, utilizing OAT's training pyramid. And this is modeled off of the National Academy of Sports Medicine's optimum performance training model. As you can see, we start with stabilization, really hammering out the neuromuscular framework and refining movement patterns before we transition into building strength and muscular endurance. And only then can we move into power when we've built that muscular efficiency and have that baseline of endurance to then set you up for peak performance. Each of these phases have unique adaptations we're looking for, and such, we manipulate acute variables appropriately. That includes number of reps, the tempo at which you perform those reps, the number of sets that you perform for each exercise. Even the exercise selection changes from phase to phase. And of course, the overall intensity and demand of the workouts in that phase of training. Many people that exercise regularly get stuck in the same rut and the same routine, doing 8 to 12 reps of the same exercises at about the same weight, and your body actually adapts very well to that stimulus. So periodization is all about being intentional with adjusting that stimulus so your body continues to adapt. Periodization is often best looked at in a macro cycle, and we can see that we can start off with an assessment and stabilization for a month or two, and as we build that basic foundation of engagement and activation through core and glute muscle groups, we can then transition into building more load tolerance through muscular endurance. Again, adjusting these acute variables, we can move more into sheer strength in the off season or in the shoulder season to get ready for your next sport or whatever that next season might hold for you. So I encourage you to improve your hiking ability to build yourself a periodized framework to work under. Rather than just randomly selecting what you're going to be doing in the gym that day, focus instead on what result do I want to see in the next 30 to 60 days. Do you want to improve your balance, stability, and full body proprioceptive awareness? Then focus on stability. Do you need to build muscular endurance because you have a big climb and a big descent on your objective? then focus on strength endurance adaptations. If you're really needing to improve your reaction time on the trail and feel more confident on rocky, on uneven terrain, then perhaps spending more time in power phase. A word of caution when building out a periodized program is don't do too much too quick. I see this often with people I work with. They're eager to get to those hard workouts where they're really feeling the burn, and that's great, but we don't want to add strength to dysfunctional movement patterns, which can only be addressed in stabilization phase, really focusing on that neuromuscular connection, slowing things down so we can then build even more robust and biometrically sound strength. The next key principle is articulation. Rarely in the backcountry are you going to be on a smooth, well-manicured trail. Sometimes in national parks that are ADA accessible, you might find that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as you get deeper into the mountains and into the wilderness, you're gonna come across some pretty rugged terrain at times. You might find down trees, rocky sections of trail, lots of roots, scree, uphill, downhill, off-camber trails. All of these things require our joints to articulate to match the terrain we're moving through. And because in our day-to-day lives, we rarely find ourselves in these situations, our training needs to reflect that joint articulation. Having spent a lot of time in the backcountry, this is something that I think about while I'm hiking, matching my foot to an awkward, rocky step, and then being able to transfer load in that position is really key. Articulation also ties into a later principle we'll talk about with mobilization, but there are amazing exercises that we can implement that start to replicate these awkward positions that you're going to find with your feet and your ankles and your hips, and then being able to recruit power and sustain muscle contractions in those sometimes uncomfortable positions. The reverse step up is one of my favorite exercises to practice that articulation. We get really deep dorsiflexion as we're loading the knee and then being able to recruit power to drive out of that position. We can also get less linear with this and implement a little more lateral motion. And this is going to really challenge that ankle stability and mobility under load. And that's what all of this is about. We also love to use different tools like a foam wedge, and that puts you off camber and might put your ankle more inverted or everted, again, requiring you to recruit different muscle groups to not only stabilize, but fuel a full-on muscle contraction. Another amazing tool is the Bosu ball or a balance disc because it's unstable, forcing our joints to articulate and again, having the ability to stabilize and recruit those muscle groups safely and effectively. When it comes to hiking, articulation mostly focuses on how the foot and ankle is able to respond and ultimately match the terrain we're walking on for maximum surface area, which results in maximum purchase to give us the greatest amount of efficiency regardless of the terrain we're moving through. The next key principle is anti-rotation. When you're walking, standing, hiking, your core is engaged, and it might be more than you think. Throw in wearing a heavier backpack, walking uphill, moving downhill, a river crossing, technical terrain, your core is going to be firing, which is why we need to train it. And when it comes to core training, and in particular with hiking, anti-rotation is what it's all about. As we're walking with our natural gait, you might think it's a very linear motion because it largely is, but there is subtle transverse movement through the pelvis that requires us to recruit our core and keep us upright as we're moving. There are a ton of different exercises we can implement to enhance our anti-rotation ability. This could be a Palloff press with a band, and we can really level that up by going onto one leg or just utilizing one arm. And essentially this resistance is pulling us laterally, and you're required to recruit not just your core, but also your glutes, your hamstrings, quadratus laborum, erector spinae, even your lats, because we're implementing an entire system that isn't just your abs and your obliques. It's truly a full body system system that's working together to help us stabilize. Anti-rotation really is exactly what it sounds like. We're resisting rotation because it's not too often that we're actively rotating while we're hiking. We're resisting that rotation as we move through terrain. We can easily add anti-rotation in subtle ways to most exercises simply by holding a weight on one side of the body. This could be a one-arm farmer carry where we're actively engaging our core to resist leaning over, or even just holding a kettlebell or a dumbbell in a goblet position on one side and performing a lunge or a squat. This is really going to enhance your ability to stay neutral when the load is awkward. Of course, there are upper body exercises we can utilize too, like the renegade row or even a single arm dumbbell bench press where our glutes and core are firing hard to maintain a neutral spine and pelvis while we move other joints through ranges of motion. Although we're focused on anti-rotation, full rotation is also really beneficial to build strength and stability through the spine and pelvis in a more concentric and eccentric way. This could be a band or a cable twist where we're rotating in the transverse plane, also a Russian twist on the floor. Anything that gets your thoracic spine rotating is also super beneficial to building a strong and stable core. The next principle is moving in different planes of motion. I've already mentioned this a few times and we're gonna hammer it out right now. There are 3 primary planes of motion that your body can move through. First, the sagittal plane, which is very linear, front to back movement, bisects the body down the middle. Then we have the frontal plane, which bisects the body between front and half and allows us to move side to side. And lastly, the transverse plane divides our body top and bottom, allowing us to rotate on an axis through our spine. Moving in different planes of motion is one of the biggest gaps I see in the fitness industry and how people are training for the trail. So much of the movement that's recommended is linear. Squats, lunges, push-ups, pull-ups, all great exercises, but they don't challenge, again, that proprioceptive awareness to get you moving in different planes of motion. Because again, while there are some well-manicured trails out there, more often than not, you're gonna have to step at an angle, or as you're stepping down, cross over, or make some awkward move that requires you to move in some plane of motion that isn't forward or backward. And that's where we need to train in these different planes of motion. And oftentimes, this is where injuries occur when we only train linearly, and then all of a sudden in the real world, we're asking our body to move sideways or rotate. So we need to train that, replicate that at home or in the gym, so we don't have to even worry about that when we're out on the trail. So many amazing exercises that aren't linear, that really challenge us to recruit different stabilizing muscles and build strength so we can handle that multiplanar movement. I love utilizing the compass lunge, which is essentially lunging in every direction, which is a full multiplanar movement. We can also do this same philosophy with squats. We can move lateral in a deep squat. We can also train multiplanar step-ups. I love this exercise requiring rotation, stability, glute engagement, and coordination, which is a huge part of multiplanar movements, is building that neuromuscular connection. We can also integrate this with plyometrics. So rather than just hopping straight up and down, hop side to side or front to back, or rotate while you're hopping, or hopping down and rotating, hopping down side to side. All of these subtle variations of what seem like really simple exercises will prepare you to move in any direction through any terrain. Our final key principle is mobilization. Mobility is not sexy. It's not easy. There's no instant gratification, and because of that, it often gets left behind. But I'll tell you right now, when it comes to longevity in hiking late into your life, mobility is essential. Time and time again, athletes that we work with at OAT report that the mobility training was everything they didn't know they needed, meaning that's not what they signed up for, but as they worked through the program, they realized just how valuable it was and how far it went in enhancing their movement quality. Because of the world we live in and how much time we spend sitting or doing the same task over and over again, is exactly why we need to mobilize specific tissues so we can restore more of our natural movement patterns. Anytime we do too much of something, even hiking or running, will ultimately result in muscle imbalances, which can then result in chronic or acute injury. I made a whole video on this exact topic called the cumulative injury cycle, and ultimately how we can interrupt this pattern. And a huge part of it in the later phases of the cycle is to implement mobility training. People often avoid mobility training because they think it needs to be this huge time investment, but even 10 to 20 minutes a day, focused, intentional work is enough to make lasting and significant changes in your body. Not to mention how mobility training can enhance our recovery timeline so we can get back out there and can continue training and getting the results we're looking for. When it comes to mobilizing our body, there are so many amazing tools and strategies we can rely on to get the results we're looking for. Oftentimes, the most approachable one to start with is simple static stretching. Don't overlook this. It's really valuable. Holding poses for a longer period of time will allow your body over time to morph more comfortably into these positions. We love to focus on opening up the quadriceps and hip flexors, the calves, the gastrocnemius and soleus, even through the arch of the foot, the hamstrings, the lower back. There's so many great stretches that we can utilize on a daily basis to keep us balanced. Myofascial release is another incredible strategy to mobilize our tissues, bring blood flow to the area, break up adhesions, and increase our range of motion. We can do simple foam rolling on our calves, quads, hamstrings, glutes, all the major muscle groups. We can also get in there with more nuanced techniques like active release technique, where we're applying pressure, moving joints through their ranges of motion. We can do a little scrubbing on some more superficial fascia. We can even get in deeper with some more trigger pointed release with a lacrosse ball or a massage ball, golf ball. Any strategy like that is a great way to get in there and start enhancing your movement patterns. We can also get way in the weeds doing more isometric work and utilizing bands to move us and pull us into new and unique shapes. The last thing I'll say about mobility training is it doesn't just need to happen at home. You can totally stay mobile while you're on your adventure in the backcountry, wherever you're at in the world. We have a whole video on this as well that I'll share with you in the description below. It just takes a little bit of forethought, a little bit of planning, and you can enhance your recovery on your backpacking trip, on your multi-day trek, so you can feel good day in and day out. So in summary, our 5 key principles are starting with periodization, having a really solid roadmap of what you're looking to get out of your training. What's your timeline? What strategies can we implement in that time that is actually going to make a difference with your performance on the trail? Being able to articulate your joints and move your body in ways that matches the terrain so you can have that increased stability and endurance. Anti-rotation with core training and building robust strength so you can carry that pack while stepping over a log and feel confident while doing it. Moving in different planes of motion. Diversify your exercise selection as much as possible. Try to break out of the habit of doing the same exercise week in and week out. Make subtle changes, moving sideways, moving at a diagonal, rotating. That'll go a long way. And lastly, mobilizing tissues. So important. I can't emphasize it enough, which is why we do warm-ups in every one of our workouts, as well as cool downs, and have a ton of mobility content across all of our platforms. I know it's a lot of information, but let's focus on the big takeaway here is that you don't need to overcomplicate it. Interweaving a little bit of all 5 of these principles will go a long way to enhancing your performance on and off the trail. This whole conversation is around you and improving how well you move, and ultimately so you can enjoy what you're doing and the trip you're going on. I've seen so many people struggle from start to finish and they don't ever have the chance to take a deep breath and enjoy the scenery because they're redlining, they're at their maximum. Don't let that be you. Implement these strategies so you can live your best life. If this information is way over your head and you feel like you need additional support, you are not alone, and that's what we are here for. All of our training programs at OAT implement and embed all of these principles and many more so you can trust in your training and know that you're doing the right things to set you up for success. If you have more specific questions, feel free to email me, book a free 30-minute call. I love hearing about your goals and what you're training for and how we can support you in getting there. Thank you so much for being a part of the OAT community. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, share it with the rest of your trail friends. And remember, no matter where you're at in the world or where you're starting from, with the right approach and some consistency, you can achieve your goals.